Hello, this is Ali, welcoming you to the 2070th edition of the Enfield Talking newspaper, Dateline 20th of October 2016. The readers this week are Caroline, Ali, Darren and John, with Peter on the controls. The editor was Phillip, and the production and distribution team is Jean, Lindsay and Phillip. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Brilly, Fernand Bouillon, Harry Breuer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perret, and is used with his kind permission. The local news stories that we will be reading from come from our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent, and are their copyright. The events information has been collated by us from other sources. The local news headlines this week include Grave Error, Cemetery Expansion Plan spells the loss of tennis courts, and Widow Seeks Justice over Manhole Charity. Before the news, we have one or two special news items and notices. First, the sunrise and sunset times for Monday the 24th of October are sunrise at 07:41 and sunset at 17:48 hours. Secondly, we would like to thank everyone who came along to the Enfield Vision Focus Day on Thursday the 20th of October to support ETN and learn more about the other organisations and companies working to support blind and visually impaired people in Enfield. Do get in touch with us to share your own news and special announcements. We love to hear from you. If you have any comments about the Enfield Talking newspaper, please phone Diane de Jersey on 020-8805-6578. She is your listener's representative and will be pleased to help you. Now, Darren will read the first item of local news.
Thank you. Enfield MP Joan Ryan is putting pressure on the government to increase the number of GPs in the borough. The Labour MP for Enfield North has launched a campaign calling for at least another 84 GPs in Enfield by 2020. Over the last 6 years, 12 doctor surgeries in Enfield have closed and only one new practice has opened. Miss Ryan said, "When the government was axing Chase Farm Hospital's accident and emergency department, David Cameron said, Enfield is getting an increase in primary care funding. That is part of our plan of not cutting but expanding our NHS. The facts speak for themselves, and right now people in Enfield who need to see a GP are facing an acute appointments crisis. We desperately need more GPs in Enfield and better funding for and better management of our local health services. My petition and survey will be a really useful means to engage and work together with the community on this important issue and to show the government the strength of our desire to protect vital primary care services."
Widow seeks justice over manhole tragedy. A grandmother whose husband died after tripping over a broken manhole cover 9 years ago says she will never stop fighting for justice. Bridget Bradley of the Glade, Winchmore Hill, believes Enfield Council should take responsibility for what happened to her husband, Michael, in November 2007. The 74-year-old former postman had parked in Winchmore Hill Road and was heading to meet his wife in the post office when he tripped and fell, breaking his femur. Mrs. Bradley, 84, recalled, "He fell to the ground immediately. There were 2 women in Ladbrokes who went outside to help him. He was screaming in pain. We called an ambulance. He couldn't be moved. They had to cut his clothes off. They told me it was serious, and I knew he wasn't going to make it. I knew I was going to lose him." Doctors could not operate as Mr. Bradley had pneumonia, and he died 9 days later. Too consumed with grief at first, Mrs. Bradley and her son, also called Michael, did not pursue Enfield Council. However, 4 months later they contacted lawyers and were devastated when the case fell apart. Then, 2 years ago, they discovered the manhole cover had been flagged up for repair a month before Mr. Bradley's accident, but was never fixed. Mrs. Bradley claims she has spoken to Enfield Council leader, Councillor Doug Taylor, but she was told too much time had passed for the authority to do anything. The retired school canteen worker said, "It was never about the money, it's about neglect. We just want some kind of justice for Michael. The council should have sorted this out. I want them to say they were wrong for not fixing it in the first place. If it weren't for this, Michael may still be here with me. I would like to tell this council I haven't forgotten this. "I won't stop fighting for justice." Paying tribute to her husband, to whom she was married for 52 years, Mrs. Bradley added, "He was a very witty man. He was very quick with jokes. I miss him so much." The Enfield Independent contacted the council for a comment.
Grave error. Cemetery expansion plan spells the loss of 10 tennis courts. Plans to axe tennis courts as part of an expansion of Edmonton Cemetery have raised concerns among Tory councillors. Enfield Council chiefs are due to decide tonight, Wednesday, whether to dispose of 10 of the 14 free courts in Great Cambridge Road, Edmonton, in order to increase the size of the neighbouring cemetery in Church Street. Like many boroughs, Enfield is facing a capacity crisis and will have run out of cemetery space in the next 2 to 3 years. Not only would the move create 1,718 new burial plots, but at up to £8,300 a go, it would bring in much needed revenue. The councillors said that as recompense it will invest £250,000 in tennis facilities and the development of sport across the borough. Joanne Laban, deputy leader of the council's Conservative group, said it was short-sighted. She said, "Axing 10 tennis courts in the borough is totally unacceptable. I know, unfortunately, there is always demand for the council to supply burials, and the cemetery service is something it wishes to expand. However, it should not mean the reduction of free-to-use tennis courts. The council is trying to mitigate the embarrassing fact that it is removing a large number of tennis courts by saying that it will be investing in existing ones. But if people are expecting Wimbledon standard courts in our parks, they will be sorely disappointed, and this does not change the fact there will still be a reduction in tennis courts." The council launched a new fitness campaign, Move More, so it seems hypocritical, therefore, that at the same time it is cutting free-to-use sports facilities. Enfield has one of the highest rates of childhood obesity, and yet we are decimating facilities that are available to those who cannot afford our leisure centres or local clubs. Ms. Laban said she hoped that the council would consider other options and look at other sites in the borough for burial plots, not simply the most convenient. Crystal von Younger, Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Public Health, said, "The stark facts are that the tennis courts are underused and the removal of 10 of the courts will have absolutely no impact on the ability of tennis fans to play the sport they love. In addition, there are dozens of other tennis courts and other sporting facilities in the borough available for booking. If the expansion went ahead, the council would be able to meet the demands of the diverse communities within Enfield by offering mausoleum and burial chambers that require a lot more space than the standard lawn or traditional burials," she added. A new plot for a traditional grave for 2 people costs £4,950 for residents and £8,300 for those resident outside the borough.
A welcome break. Harassed workmen treated to a meal. Mothers thanked workmen building controversial new cycle lanes by bringing them a home-cooked breakfast. 3 women who support Cycle Enfield surprised the tradesmen with bacon rolls, pastries, tea and coffee to say thank you for the bike lanes. Claire Rogers, Claire Brady and Maggie Westhead also created a banner expressing their gratitude, made by their children. The scheme has proved controversial, with many saying the loss of parking spaces will ruin businesses. Ms. Rogers, whose daughters are 13 and 9, said, "We're very excited about the difference the Cycle Enfield scheme will make to our kids. We wanted to show our support." Ms. Westhead, who was with her son William, 7 months, said, "I think people find the idea of change difficult, but this is the future. I'm delighted that children will be able to cycle safely. I want to be less reliant on the car, especially on the school run." Ms. Brady currently cycles to school with her 6-year-old on a tag-along bike, but wants her daughter to ride her bike independently on the new lanes. She said she's going to have so much more freedom and exercise. Florin Chiregi, one of the Ringway Jacobs workmen currently on site, said he and his team, Ichim Ionut, Daniel Chiregi, Ian Blanariou and Andrei Ursut, appreciated the gesture. He said, "Some people have come up to us to say they don't like what we're doing and that no one wants the cycle lanes. But I think cycling is a healthier way to travel. I cycle myself." All three women belong to Better Streets for Enfield, a local group calling for less car-dominated streets in the borough. The work so far has included a curb built out to slow traffic and a stretch of curb-protected bike lane near the Green Dragon Lane and the A105 junction. The Cycle Enfield work is expected to last 2 years.
Drug smuggling trio jailed. An Enfield man involved in an organised drugs network which smuggled heroin and cocaine into the UK from Europe has been jailed for 7 years. Aidin Aziz, 45, of the Ridgeway, was arrested with Omar Asaf, 35, in April after they abandoned the vehicle they were travelling in, having rammed a police car which had tried to stop them. Minutes earlier, they had collected an orange carrier bag containing 2 kilograms of heroin and 2 kilograms of cocaine from the home of 45-year-old Debbie Reed in St Albans, Hertfordshire. Earlier that day, she had travelled back from France via the Channel Tunnel at Folkestone. Officers from the Met Police's Specialist Crime and Operations Command had been keeping her under surveillance. It had been Reed's third journey to France in the space of a month. On the previous journey, she had met Asaf on her way back to St Albans, but on the afternoon of April the 6th, she did not meet anyone, returned straight to her home, and was seen to remove the orange carrier bag from her car. At the same time, Asaf left his home in Wembley, northwest London, to collect Aziz, and the two drove to Reed's address, where she was seen to hand Asaf the orange carrier bag containing the drugs. All three were arrested and charged with conspiracy to import Class A drugs. Reed pleaded guilty on May the 6th at Harrow Crown Court. Asaf admitted the same charge at the same court on August 31st, and Aziz pleaded guilty there on October the 3rd. At the same court on Thursday, Aziz and Asaf were both sentenced to 7 years, with Reed receiving 6 years and 8 months. Debbie Reed as the importer was central to this network, with Omar Asaf and Aidin Aziz responsible for the onward distribution of the drugs, said Detective Constable Andrew Walker of the Specialist Crime Command. Reed was seen to blatantly smuggle the drugs in a carrier bag, making no attempt to hide them. This police operation has successfully dismantled a network of sophisticated criminals who, despite making use of encrypted mobile devices, did not manage to evade capture, he added.
Monster who murdered actress gets life sentence. Soap star defenceless against partner. The partner of EastEnders actress Sian Blake has been jailed for life for the horrific murder of her and the couple's 2 young sons. Arthur Simpson Kent, 49, will spend the rest of his life behind bars for killing Ms Blake and their sons 8-year-old Zachary and 4-year-old Amon. Mr Justice Singh, sentencing Simpson Kent at the Old Bailey, ordered that he should serve a whole life prison term for his barbaric crimes. Simpson Kent murdered the actress, 43, who was terminally ill with motor neuron disease on the 14th of December. The court had previously heard that Ms Blake's condition meant she would have been physically incapable of defending herself from a violent attack. The judge said she planned to leave him and take the boys with her. They were set to start at a Greenwich school in April this year. The 3 had been hit on the head before being stabbed by Simpson Kent, who painted over bloodstains in their bungalow. He wrapped and buried each of them in the back garden of their home in Erith. Simpson Kent then sent texts from his dead partner's phone to cover his tracks, including one to Ms Blake's sister Ava on December the 16th, saying she and the boys needed to get away for a while. The court heard that Simpson Kent told a consultant forensic psychiatrist that something just snapped in me. However, the judge rejected Simpson Kent's account and his claim he was depressed and had planned to also kill himself before bottling it. After the sentencing last Wednesday, Ms Blake's family described Simpson Kent as a monster who robbed us of everything we wished for Sian and our precious boys.
The most rewarding thing I've ever done. Jill's verdict on her decision to adopt. Joy replaced heartache for Jill Spivey when she adopted a child after being told she was unable to have babies of her own. And now the 55-year-old is at the forefront of a drive by Enfield Council in National Adoption Week to recruit mums and dads willing to give children in care a loving home. Jill of Silver Street, Enfield Town, knows just how rewarding the experience can be, having brought up 12-year-old Jasmine, whom she adopted when she was 13 months old. Jill was unable to have children naturally with her husband, suffering a number of miscarriages. Still desperate to start a family, they went down the adoption route. We wanted to give a child a home, and we wanted a child to experience a good life, said Jill. You don't get any more joy than having a child. You watch them learn and develop, and you live your life through them, she explained. The council wants to raise awareness about the shortage of adoptive parents and are encouraging more people to consider adopting. I think some people shy away from adoption and may be daunted by it, but I think they need to speak to people with positive experiences, she continued. She believes prospective applicants who feel unsure about adopting would gain an insight by talking with adoptive parents to learn about their experience. Jill, who is now a single parent, said, "There have been challenging times, but becoming a mum has been the most rewarding thing I've done." She has to play good cop, bad cop to put in place boundaries, just like any parent, but in doing so she believes her relationship with Jasmine has strengthened as a result. We have a strong bond, and we get on particularly well, and people see that. We have a nice relationship. To apply to become an adoptive parent, applicants need to be over the age of 21 and be able to provide a stable and safe home. Regular information sessions are held across North London, including in Enfield, as well as in Barnet, Camden, Haringey, Hackney and Islington, where would-be applicants can talk to social workers to find out more about adoption. Councillor Ifa Orhan, Enfield's Cabinet Member for Education, Children's Services, Protection and Libraries, said that 80 children were successfully placed with families last year. By working together, we can ensure prospective parents benefit from our shared experience and are better placed to find a loving home for the vulnerable young people in our care, she said. This is a life-changing decision for all concerned. A stable home gives children the care, support and consistency that helps them in education and through life. National Adoption Week runs until this Sunday. To find out more about adoption, visit www.adoptionnorthlondon.co.uk.
Council to spend £50,000 on new decorations. The council will spend £50,000 on new Christmas lights, despite having to make millions in cutbacks. The festive decoration plans include 4 Christmas trees installed in Enfield Town, Palmer's Green, Southgate Circus and Cockfosters Green. Lights will also be hung on buildings in Edmonton Green, and Ponders End will see lights added to park trees. Enfield Council says it has set aside £50,000 to replace its current lights and turn town centres into winter wonderlands to attract shoppers. This is despite the council having to make £56 million of cuts by 2020, which has included reductions in youth and disability services. Council Cabinet Member for Economic Regeneration and Business, Councillor Alan Sitkin, said, "We want to do everything we can to support our town centre businesses during the crucial Christmas period, and we will be installing fantastic displays in town centres to brighten them up over the busiest time of the year and get more shoppers into Enfield." He admitted the council's current set of lights had mostly reached the end of their usable life, and the council could not afford to completely replace them all, which he said would cost £200,000. Beg pardon. Instead, the council is asking local businesses to donate money or any extra decorations they have to help boost the festive spirit come December. Councillor Sitkin said, "We simply do not have that money, so we are asking retailers and local businesses who think their areas would benefit from more extensive displays to contribute towards their cost." The council says it will cover the costs of fitting, testing, storing and powering the lights funded by retailers and would keep using them in future years. Any businesses who wish to can can call 020 8379 5233.
Billy Whiz. Memoirs recall band's brush with the big time. Famed as the man who introduced Jimi Hendrix and David Bowie, Enfield's very own godfather of rock, Billy Ritchie, has published his life story. The ABC of 123 was published last week, causing a flurry of excitement throughout the music industry. It details the ups and downs of 123, one of the earliest bands to play a form of inventive rock music that became a blueprint for what would later be called prog rock. Mr. Ritchie, a father of three, originally from Scotland, moved to London when the band hit the big time and set up home in Brigadier Hill, Enfield in the late 1960s. He taught himself piano after a neighbour threw one out on the street, and is generally acknowledged as being the first keyboard player in rock music to put his piano on stilts and stand up. We jam with them all, Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, the Bee Gees, Lulu, but we were always on the verge of something that never quite happened, said Mr. Ritchie, aged 72. We toured all over America, Canada and Europe in our heyday, but it's a funny old industry. One week you're up and the next you're down, and you're always looking for that high, which is why a lot of musicians turn to drink and drugs. The band set consisted of standard pop and blues songs, but in Mr. Ritchie's hands they were reshaped and rewritten to become something new. There was nothing like it around, he added. People used to ask who my influences were, but it all came from me. I didn't even have a record player. I never used to listen to music other than Bach. He rewrote versions of songs by Bowie, I Dig Everything, and Paul Simon, America, The Sounds of Silence, both completely unknown at that time. And 123 was signed by Brian Epstein, but following his death they were sidelined in favour of the Bee Gees. They were then signed to the Ellis Wright Agency, and the most commercially successful period of the band's career began under the new name of Clouds. Major tours, 3 albums and single releases followed, but real success proved elusive, and the band broke up in October 1971. Mr. Ritchie recalled, I wanted out of the band, I'd had enough, but I didn't want to tell the others, because I knew that there'd be a lot of discussion and I couldn't be bothered with it. So at the end of a gig in Stoke-on-Trent, I jumped on the organ and literally rode it off the stage. Then I just left and refused to talk to any one of them.
Court case counsellor is expelled by Labour. Now Erbel says he's considering resignation. A councillor under fire for receiving a second criminal conviction in 2 years has been slung out of the Labour Party. Nesmi Erbel has been sitting as an independent Labour member of Enfield Council since he was suspended last year after his first conviction in 2014 came to light. He was told that he would be expelled for 5 years after a Labour hearing on Wednesday last week. He's now considering whether to resign as a councillor. The Lower Edmonton ward councillor told the Advertiser that he would be meeting community groups and members in his ward to hear their views before making a final decision. I want to resign as a councillor, he said. Mr. Erbel, a black cab driver, has sat on the council benches as an independent Labour member since he was suspended by the Labour group following his conviction for fraudulently doctoring his suburban taxi licence 4 months after he was elected in May 2014. Last week's expulsion came after the 47-year-old received a 6-week suspended prison sentence by Highbury Corner magistrates in September after he was convicted of public order offence for swearing at an off-duty policeman who had pulled him over for allegedly using a mobile phone. Magistrates also handed down fines and costs totalling £1,045 at the hearing on September the 22nd. Mr. Erbel had previously received a 4-week sentence suspended for a year at Southwark Crown Court for doctoring his suburban taxi licence, so it allowed him to take passengers across London rather than just the 4 boroughs for which he was licensed. Mr. Erbel of Nightingale Road, Edmonton, joined Labour as a teenager and has been a member for 30 years. I want to resign, but I want to talk to members, he added. Terry Neville, who leads the Conservative group on the council, said the expulsion was long overdue. It must be a matter of some surprise to most people that it's taken them so long to deal with this situation, he said, and renewed calls for Mr. Earble to resign as a councillor. He should resign, added Mr. Neville. There should be an election because he's not got a mandate to sit there. The Labour Party said it did not comment on the status of individual members. Mr. Earble's convictions do not warrant disqualification from office under UK law. That only applies to those sentenced to 3 months or more in prison.
MPs step into row over council funding. Wide support for pressure group's petition. A campaign to tackle the way Enfield Council is given less cash than other boroughs has been backed by MPs. Conservative David Burrows and Labour representatives Kate Osamore and Joan Ryan are supporting a petition by the Enfield Over 50s Forum calling for the discrepancy to be addressed by central government. The council gets £496.10 per head in government cash, while Westminster gets £917.59 and Hammersmith and Fulham receives £900. There is also a disparity in NHS grants. This year, Enfield gets £362 million for a population of 320,000, but Camden gets £372 million for 260,000, and Islington £339 million for 233,000. Monty Meth, the president of the forum, said, "This petition is seeking to restore some justice in the way our borough is treated by Whitehall. By supporting it, you will not just be helping Enfield residents today, but future generations of Enfield citizens who want to live and work in a clean and thriving borough." Although Enfield has 32.8% of children living in poverty, the highest number across London councils, the government cut its grant by £11.6 million in 2013. Joan Ryan MP raised the issue on the floor of the House of Commons when she pointed out how, although Enfield has the fourth highest population across London boroughs, this is not reflected in the money it is given. She said she wholeheartedly supports the campaign. Meanwhile, Edmonton's Kate Osamore plans to write to the Secretary of State for Communities about the discrepancy, and David Burrows, the MP for Enfield Southgate, said, "I am happy to endorse the petition for fairer funding for Enfield." Joanne McCartney, the London Assembly member for Enfield and Haringey, and Deputy Mayor of London, said, "It is vital Enfield gets the fair funding it needs. Enfield Council is being forced to make cuts to services, including those that affect the most vulnerable in our society. We need to get a better deal." The petition is also backed by Council leader Councillor Doug Taylor, who said Enfield gets less funding because the government uses population data, which is up to 15 years old, to determine where the money goes. Councillor Terry Neville, leader of Enfield Conservatives, agreed, saying, "The formula for assessing government funding is hopelessly wrong." Call 020 8807 2076 for petition forms, or go to, and wait for this, rather a long one, https://www.change.org/p/Enfield-borough-over-50s, which is the figures 50 followed by an S, -forum-fair-funding-for-Enfield. I'm not going to repeat it because I'm sure you'll use the telephone number.
Bomb alert as builder finds unexploded shell. A builder who found an unexploded bomb says he has never seen anything like it in all his 20 years in the job. Oliver Leonard started work at a building site in Monkham's Lane, Woodford Green, as normal last Tuesday morning, but by midday things had taken an unexpected turn. Mr. Leonard from Chingford said, "We were digging the basement for the house when I saw something in the ground. I thought it didn't look right, and it had black all around it, so I called my boss, who called the site owners and the police. I wasn't scared, but you certainly don't expect that when you have your breakfast in the morning. Police officers were called to the scene just after midday, blocking off Monkham's Lane at both ends as well as Knighton Drive. The cordons were removed 3 hours later. A bomb disposal officer at the scene confirmed the suspicious object was a 5-inch field gun shell. He said, "It has got markings on it, but they don't look like military ones because the stamps would have to be perfectly aligned. It looks like someone has had it as a collector's item, got bored with it, and then buried it in the garden. It's a pretty big shell, but there aren't any explosives inside. It's going to be safely disposed of elsewhere, where it won't cause any hassle in the future." Mr. Leonard said he has never come across anything like it before and usually just finds boring items like clay bottles and lead drains. A spokesman for the Metropolitan Police confirmed the threat was over and dealt with by 3:20 p.m.
Firm is stripped of HGV licence. A cash and carry firm in Edmonton has lost its vehicle operating licence after a traffic commissioner said it was grossly irresponsible and put the safety of other road users at risk. Traffic Commissioner Nick Denton said Upper Edmonton-based Denar Limited did not bother to find out about the onerous requirements for driving HGVs. Revoking the HGV licence, Mr. Denton said after a public inquiry, "The company's approach to operating HGVs has been wholly irresponsible." He also banned company director Ahmet Sezgin from holding an HGV licence for 3 years. Mr. Denton ruled, "Such a period is necessary to mark the seriousness of embarking on HGV operations without any thought at all as to what this involved, and without at any stage of the 2-year life of the licence attempting to find out." The result was that vehicles were driven by drivers with no entitlement to drive them, and were driven by drivers who were often not using tachograph cards and were not taking proper weekly rest. The safety of other road users was put at risk. A Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency investigation launched in May discovered that the Ely Road-based company had never downloaded data from the digital tachograph, despite holding a restricted goods vehicle operator's licence since 2014. There was no system for analysing the data or identifying drivers' infringements, the investigation found. The agency discovered a catalogue of drivers' hours offences, including failure to take a weekly rest and driving for more than 4.5 hours. Mr. Denton said, "The company had almost no knowledge of an HGV operator's legal responsibilities. The company was simply operating its 5-tonne vehicle in the same way as it was operating its 3.5-tonne vehicles." Mr. Sezgin did not attend the public inquiry in Eastbourne, East Sussex, as he had proposed surrendering the HGV licence. Mr. Sezgin told the Advertiser he has now sold the van. "We were not really familiar with the whole system," he said. He advised people, "If you hold an operator's licence which is above 3.5 tonnes, make sure you have clear training and understand all the regulations and systems that are in place before taking the van onto the road."
Borough is failing to help refugees, claims Burrows. Enfield must step up and deliver, says MP. Tory MP David Burrows has accused Enfield council leaders of sitting on their hands and doing nothing to help child refugees. But Cabinet member Aoife Orhan rejected his claims and urged him to check his facts. Mr Burrows' comments were made in Parliament on Monday last week as he pressed Home Secretary Amber Rudd for assurances that 400 children with a legal right to live in the UK would be safely found a home before the imminent destruction of the Calais jungle. The MP for Enfield Southgate, who is vice chairman of the all-party parliamentary group on refugees, told Ms Rudd that unless more was done to secure the safety of children at the camp, the Prime Minister's words about standing up for the vulnerable would be just that, words. He pressed Ms Rudd to provide assurance that all children eligible for transfer will be in place before demolition starts. Mr Burrow also hit out at the council. He said, "Despite signing a motion welcoming refugees, Enfield has not provided any places under the Vulnerable Persons Relocation Scheme. This was in stark contrast, he said, to other London boroughs, including Camden, which has taken 30 child refugees, and Barnet, which has taken 6. Mr Burrows added Enfield must step up and deliver on their commitment to take their fair share of vulnerable children who have a legal right to be in the UK. Conservative councillor Nick Deans echoed his sentiments. It's been over a year since Labour councillors stood up and endlessly criticised the government for its stance on refugees and how much help was being offered, he said. But the council said Mr Burrows was mistaken and should have checked his facts before speaking out in Parliament. Ms Orhan, Cabinet Member for Education, Children's Services and Protection, said, "I'm very disappointed that Mr Burrows didn't in fact check his facts with us first before speaking out. Enfield has taken a very high number of children seeking asylum. We have 70 in our care and a further 50 young people aged 18 to 21. So to say we're not taking our fair share is nonsense. We would ask him to stop playing politics and roll up his sleeves and get on with the job in hand. Once the government has sorted out the paperwork for the children at Calais, we're ready and waiting to take more. The jungle camp at Calais is said to be demolished by the end of the year and its 9,000 inhabitants dispersed. Charities working on the ground in Calais estimate that as many as 400 vulnerable unaccompanied child asylum seekers have family in the UK and are eligible to be resettled in Britain.
MPs blast probe into pregnancy test drug. A mum who has spent decades campaigning for a full inquiry into the effects of a hormonal pregnancy testing drug was in Parliament last week as MPs slammed an investigating panel's lack of progress, calling it a complete whitewash. Dubbed the forgotten thalidomide, Primodos was a drug given to women in the 1960s and 1970s to establish pregnancy, and many believe it caused damage and deformity in thousands of babies worldwide. Miscarriages, cerebral palsy, brain damage, and children being born without limbs were some of the alleged side effects. Chris Gooch, aged 68, of Carnarvon Avenue, Enfield, was given the pills in 1970. Her daughter Emma, now 45, was born some months later with birth defects affecting fingers on both hands and her feet and toes. Ms Gooch said, "I have no doubt that Primodos is responsible. Emma's fingers were affected and her toes, and now she suffers chronic backache. She still manages to work, but is in constant pain. We want the truth, and we are not going away." An independent inquiry into the use of the oral hormone pregnancy test was set up in 2014 and has been dogged with criticism. During last Thursday's debate, Labour MP Yasmin Qureshi told the House of Commons, "To have an inquiry which then becomes a complete whitewash is a waste of everyone's time and money and becomes pointless." Labour MP Maria Eagle, a lawyer, said there was a familiar pattern to complaints about the suspected effects of Primodos. She said the pattern includes a lack of warnings about effects, being called a fussy mother, denial of causality, the disappearance of medical records, and outright hostility. The drug was produced by Shearing, a German company later taken over by Bayer and was withdrawn in 1978. Bayer denies that Primodos was responsible for causing any deformities in children. A panel of independent experts set up by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency has since been probing claims between links of birth defects and hormone pregnancy tests. A spokesman for the agency said, "We believe the review is being carried out in a thorough and impartial manner and will take into account all available evidence in delivering a report. We will update people as soon as the group has reached a conclusion. The report is due to be published early next year."
Ugandan trip, a real eye-opener. A Girl Guide has gained the movement's highest honour after completing a series of adventurous challenges, including caring for orphans in an East African village. Rebecca Jenner, 23, of Titchfield Road, Enfield Lock, has been awarded the prestigious Queen's Guide Award. She is leader of the 16th Enfield Guides and assistant leader of Enfield Brownies, both of whom meet in St George's Parish Hall in Hertford Road, Freezywater. To achieve the award, she had to accomplish a series of tasks aimed at equipping her with new skills and improving her personal development. Her most rewarding challenge was her trip last year in May to Rukungiri in Uganda, where she volunteered for 2 weeks to help orphans with the Christian charity Bridge of Hope. Rebecca travelled with a group of 8 volunteers from the charity, which supports orphaned children in poverty-stricken parts of Uganda. Volunteering in Uganda was amazing, and it was an eye-opening experience to realise what we have here. We really take it for granted, she said. During her trip, she met a 4-year-old boy who needed financial support and now sponsors him to help him with day-to-day costs such as food and school fees. Rebecca and her family have clubbed together to fund a kitchen for his family, who had only basic cooking facilities when she visited. The family was so pleased to find out they will soon have a kitchen in their home, and it is lovely we could help, said Rebecca. Other challenges Rebecca accomplished included learning ballet and tap dancing in just a year. She also gained her pack holiday licence, which she passed after organising a weekend trip for 25 brownies at an outdoor activity centre in Edgware. Rebecca was presented with the Queen's Guide Award by Chief Guide Valerie Levaillant at a special ceremony at the House of Commons last month. "I'm overjoyed," she added. "It's really nice to be an inspiration and a role model to the younger brownies. I learned so many new life skills for the award, and after all the hard work I put in, it is a great relief to have achieved it. I am really proud."
Education advice for parents at the click of a button. The Enfield Independent has launched a unique new education platform, allowing people to review and select the right school or college. The site's aim is to become the go-to place for any parent who wants to make an informed decision about their child's education. The platform brings together information from a variety of sources, including gov.uk, Ofsted, and the schools themselves. Parents will be able to do the following: search and compare all schools and colleges in their local area and across the UK, access Ofsted results with links to full reports, get advice from other parents and students, or share their own views to help others, access academic performances and league tables presented as infographics to make them easy to digest, view a searchable calendar of open days and evenings, and see bespoke guides to help with every aspect of the decision-making. Schools, colleges and sixth forms can also edit and enhance their own profiles with features including a principal's message, core values and beliefs, new developments and anything else to connect with audiences, the ability to upload school brochures, and add a calendar of events throughout the year with open days and evenings, social events, weekend activities and community outreach. Tim Jones, group editor of the Enfield Independent, said, "The early feedback we have had from both schools and parents has been amazing." And you can find more about that at the website www.enfield-independent.co.uk/education.
Free child seat safety checks. Free safety checks for child car seats are being offered by Enfield Council at Asda Supermarket in Chase Side, Southgate next Tuesday, October the 25th. Council officers will be giving demonstrations between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. on how to correctly fit car and booster seats for children under 4 feet tall to ensure they travel safely on the road.
Group to fight cuts to health services. Concerned patients have formed a new group opposing cuts to Enfield's health services. Defend Enfield NHS has been formed after what they describe as many crises in the borough's healthcare. Enfield Clinical Commissioning Group, or CCG, recently released a plan to save money after being rated inadequate and placed in special measures by the government as a result of overspending. However, Defend Enfield NHS is worried that the plan could result in cuts to services and more privatisation. Member Martin Blanchard of Palmer's Green said, "We've come together because of our concerns about what is happening to the NHS. Several of us have great experiences of NHS care, and we do not want to lose this for our families. Others have retired or left the NHS. We meet in each other's homes and discuss issues. We've seen the damage that serial efficiency savings can do to the availability and quality of care. What we need is the full reinstatement of a comprehensive, publicly funded, publicly owned and publicly accountable NHS which is free at the point of use."
Henry answers Call of the Wild. Vet student's African adventure. Veterinary student Henry Mosey swapped cats and dogs for monkeys, crocodiles and lions during a 3-week placement at a wildlife rescue centre in Africa. Henry, 23, of Kerry Close, Palmer's Green, who is in his 5th year of veterinary medicine at the Royal Veterinary College in Potters Bar, travelled to Lilongwe Wildlife Centre in Malawi to offer a helping hand to the centre, which cares for sick and injured animals, as well as monitoring the overall health of wild populations. He said, "There wasn't really a typical day. Each one was different. Every morning we'd see if anything came into the clinic which needed to be treated, mainly monkeys." During his time in Lilongwe, Henry helped treat animals including orphaned vervet monkeys and a baby jackal. The aim was to treat the animals before releasing them back into the wild. Henry, a former pupil of the Latimer School in Hazelbury Road in Edmonton, explained, although this was not always possible. For example, Bella, a one-eyed lioness, is a permanent fixture at the centre and something of a mascot, because her chances of surviving outside captivity would be slim. Other full-time residents at the centre included Bella's soulmate, Simba, bush dog, the crocodile, a python, also called Henry, a yellow baboon called Alf, and Chorley, a serval cat. Meanwhile, Henry got a chance to admire hippopotamuses at a respectful distance during a safari in neighbouring Zambia. The whole experience left him wanting more, and Henry, who graduates next summer, is already considering a return once he qualifies. He explained, "It expanded my knowledge a great deal. It's definitely made me consider the possibility of working as a wildlife vet in Africa. I'd like to go back there again as a fully qualified vet." For more information about Lilongwe Wildlife Centre, visit www.lilongwe, that's Lilongwe, wildlife.org.
What a cracker! Classical ballet takes centre stage when the highly acclaimed Vienna Festival Ballet Company returns to Millfield Theatre in Edmonton on Sunday, October the 30th. The Enchanting Tale of the Nutcracker is one of the world's best-loved ballets and centres around Clara and her Nutcracker doll, which magically transforms into a princely soldier. Their adventures see Clara and the Nutcracker doll combat the Mouse King and join the Sugar Plum Fairy and her cavalier on a wonderful journey through the shimmering land of snow to a kingdom made entirely of sweets. Returning by popular demand, Vienna Festival Ballet's Nutcracker promises to be a delightful treat for ballet fans and interested observers alike. The performances also offer an ideal opportunity to introduce children to the art and skills of ballet. The celebrated Austrian dancer Peter Malek founded the company in 1980, following an illustrious career as a dancer of international renown. Now in the 37th year of producing quality ballet productions, the company continues to experience remarkable success and perform great classical ballets all over the world. Vienna Festival Ballet is known for beautiful and lavish handmade costumes, as well as its commitment to bringing the greatest classical ballets to the widest possible audience. The company's productions have got all of the elegance and extravagance associated with the best of ballet. Notable for the continued freshness and strength of its dancing casts, Vienna Festival Ballet attracts highly talented dancers from all over the world. And for further information about them and the performance, visit www.viennafestivalballet.com.
Football pays tribute after death of Tommy Lawrence. Footballer Tommy Lawrence, who played and managed Enfield FC, was fondly remembered this week by former fans of the defunct club as well as those of the present-day Enfield Town FC. The 82-year-old, who's died from cancer, helped establish Enfield FC's dominance as one of the country's top amateur clubs in the 1960s. He was the Southbury Road club's all-time leading goalscorer, making 204 appearances between 1959 and 1964 and scoring 196 goals, including 8 hat-tricks. His goal-scoring prowess helped Enfield win the Athenian League in successive years between 1961 and 63 and reach the 1964 Amateur Cup final for the first time in the club's first season in the Isthmian League. Having already won 12 amateur England caps, his playing career was cruelly cut short that season when he suffered a fractured skull playing in an Olympic Games trial at Coventry City. He was appointed manager of Enfield FC after a short spell as coach in 1965, and during his time at the helm, he led the club to 2 FA Amateur Cup final wins in 67 and 70 and 3 consecutive Isthmian League titles. 2 of Tommy's 4 children attended Enfield Town's Ryman Premier League match with Wingate and Finchley on Saturday, when a minute's silence was held before the kick-off. His daughter Judith, who was there with his sister Charlotte, said, "Dad had great affection for the club. He was a talented player, but everything he achieved was through hard graft. It's a cliché, but he was a lovely man and really would help anyone out." Lifelong Enfield FC and Enfield Town fan Alan Medlock paid tribute, describing Tommy as arguably the club's best player and certainly the most influential person in the club's history. His funeral will take place at Enfield Crematorium, Great Cambridge Road, next Wednesday, October the 26th at 2:30 p.m, and a post-funeral gathering will take place in Butler's Bar at Enfield Town's Queen Elizabeth Stadium, Donkey Lane, from 4 p.m.
Watch out for roofing crooks. Homeowners have been warned by Enfield Council to beware of conmen offering to clear guttering after a spate of cases has left residents fleeced out of hundreds of pounds for unnecessary roofing work. Trading standards officers are investigating areas where the tricksters have been operating in Bush Hill Park, Enfield Lock, Palmer's Green and Winchmore Hill. Daniel Anderson, the Council's Cabinet Member for Environment, said, "We want to catch these villains before they con anyone else out of their money." Right, you've got to roll with it. All rise for an Enfield baking duo who were crowned winners at the World Bread Awards with their multigrain bloomer. Husband and wife team Richard Copsey and Kate Smith scooped the prestigious award and also bagged a handful of other gongs at the Tiptree World Bread Awards last week. They beat off competition from loaves sent in from around the United Kingdom, delivered by courier, taxi and in person on the morning of the judging at Cathedral Hall in Westminster Cathedral to ensure maximum freshness. The bakers, who own Holtwhite's Bakery and Deli in Chayside, Enfield, said they were delighted with the accolade. Kate said, "We were absolutely thrilled with the award. It's great that it was for our most popular type of bread, and it's also nice to be able to raise the profile of food in Enfield. We don't really have a secret. We use all good, natural, organic ingredients. There's no rubbish in there, and add a bit of honey into our wholemeal bread, so maybe that's it." Their chocolate bread was runner-up in the specialty sweet category, and their raisin and walnut sourdough was runner-up in the specialty savoury category. They got a gold award for their rosemary and sea salt focaccia, and a bronze award for their chase sourdough. Holtwhite's was initially a micro-bakery run from the couple's home, where they baked up to 100 loaves of bread each Friday night and sold them from the kitchen door on Saturday mornings. In 2011, they left their sensible day jobs and opened Holtwhite's.
And here we have a letter from Dr. Linda Miller of Raleigh Road, Enfield. Stop delaying lane work. It's bad enough that the council is going ahead with the cycle lane scheme despite 75% of residents being against it. It's bad enough that the work is already leading to tailbacks and rat running at peak times. But now we see that Claire Rogers has so little understanding of the costs of this expensive vanity project that she is actively slowing work down. Not everybody thinks the Cycle Enfield scheme is a bad thing. These mothers brought the workmen a home-cooked breakfast online October the 14th. Your article reports that Ringway Jacobs site supervisor Glenn Heath said he expected the Cycle Enfield work to be completed in 2 years, while the A105 scheme is expected to take about 7 months. Well, every time they stop work for an extended breakfast with the Mini Holland groupies, it's adding another hour to that timeline, and it's another hour's work overrun that taxpayers will have to pay for. Mrs. Rogers says that she and her children, aged 9 and 13, are very excited about the difference the Cycle Enfield scheme will make, and thinks the reason that people oppose the scheme is because people find the idea of change difficult. An alternative reason might be that those opposing the scheme have rather more of an idea of the needs of local businesses than 9 and 13-year-olds. At the moment, some 6% of traffic along this main arterial route is haulage. Many of the companies based in the local industrial parks specialise in manufacturing, finishing and onward distribution of goods. If residents' fears for the impact of the road restrictions on traffic turn out to be correct, then it's very likely that companies sending goods vehicles along the A105 during the construction phase will be reassessing their logistics. Indeed, it would not be a surprise if they decided to move their operations to other boroughs rather than put up with this. And Claire Rogers and her acolytes are actively extending the construction phase, making such decisions all the more likely. What a triumph.
This letter comes from Councillor Daniel Anderson, the Cabinet Member of Environment at Enfield Council, titled Waste Plan Makes Sense. It's a response to a letter critical of the waste ideas put forward by the Council, as follows. Mr. Edis argues that a fortnightly bin collection is not practical, so let me explain the rationale behind this suggestion. As a result of central government cuts, Enfield Council has, since 2010, been forced to slash £118 million from its budget, and now has to find a further £56 million of cuts by 2020, and this is on top of a rising and ageing population. Both options consulted upon, the other being a charge weekly service, would achieve savings of at least £400,000 per annum. The suggestion Mr. Edis makes of a seasonal collection was indeed considered, but alas rejected on the basis that it would only achieve a fraction of those savings. I can also reassure Mr. Edis that evidence from elsewhere, where such changes have been introduced, show that residents do not resort to burning garden waste, but turn to other options, such as composting or using local recycling facilities. Regarding black bins collections, which will remain weekly, Mr. Edis is incorrect. The waste is not sent to landfill, but collected and disposed of at the Edmonton Eco Park, where it is used to generate electricity. Indeed, Enfield Council is at the forefront here, planning to capture the heat from this facility with a view to providing sustainable low-cost energy for residents via our Lee Valley Heat network. Furthermore, we certainly do not support bin taxes and instead are focusing our resources on encouraging people to recycle using our excellent curbside service at Barrowell Green. Mr. Edis should also note that fortnightly green bin collections are already standard across many London boroughs. Indeed, the following Conservative authorities offer a fortnightly charge service: Richmond, Kingston, Bexley and Bromley. Therefore, Mr. Edis would be best advised to direct his ire at the Conservative government rather than this dynamic, forward-thinking Labour council. Another letter I've got here is titled No Room for Wheelie Bins and comes from Neil Littman of Winchmore Hill. I live in a cottage in Vickersmore Lane, which has had special dispensation for many years to leave rubbish out for collection in plastic bags on the morning of the collection. This is because there is no room for a wheelie bin outside, short of leaving it on the pavement. There are 3 similar homes on this road, and about a dozen similar properties in Compton Avenue. I have written to the council about this issue, particularly as they supply the bags that we use, which are blue for recycling and grey for household waste. They have not replied to me. I am particularly concerned as I have no intention of keeping double the quantity of rotting waste in the house for an extra week, and doubt anybody else would do the same. I actually think this is turning the clock back and an indication of how desperate the council must be with the reduction in local services.
And a letter from Rick Jewell of Hoe Lane in Enfield, who argues it's up to all of us to tackle the fly tippers. He writes, I constantly read, whether in the locals or on social media, about how bad Enfield Council is in tackling this fly tipping epidemic that we seem to be going through. My neighbours will tell you I'm proactive in getting dumped rubbish moved from around my area, whether in my road or my locality, it doesn't matter. I often read of people who have witnessed perpetrators of this type of offence pull up in vehicles and offload all of their junk onto a verge or into a lay-by and yet do nothing about it. I understand it's difficult for people to approach these undesirables, but there aren't many of us without a mobile phone capable of taking pictures. Failing that, follow the time-honoured tradition of writing down a number plate. Report it, for it's not them to have to look out of their window at their rubbish, it's us. I often ring the council or email my councillors, and I have to say I've always found the service that comes and removes the offending pile of junk, sometimes within a couple of hours, an excellent one. There's no point watching people or noticing rubbish first thing in the morning and then immediately blaming the council for its appearance. People dump rubbish when no one's looking, in alleys and quiet roads mostly. We need to report it to get it removed. I know it's the moral duty of all of us to report this type of offence, but maybe we should start looking at it the same way we do benefit fraud. To clear up other people's rubbish costs us all because it takes money that could be used elsewhere. A couple of years ago, photos were published in the local papers of fly tippers in Carterhatch Road, with the hope that anyone identify the offenders and a successful prosecution could lead to a £50 reward. Unfortunately, the pictures were at least a year old, but maybe the council should consider that type of campaign again and offer some reward, whether in monetary form or a deduction in council tax. Maybe we could then start to put an end to the lazy individuals who just want to blight our communities, rather than doing things like the respectful majority.
And now I've got a couple on cycle lanes. The first one from G.A. Musey, a regular correspondent of Mitchell Road, Palmer's Green, under the heading Cyclists Should Give Way. Further to Blind People Are at Risk, opinion, September the 28th, when I use a bus to go shopping in Palmer's Green, I get off the bus directly onto the pavement. This will not happen when cycle lanes are placed alongside the A105. Bus passengers of all ages and ability will be required to cross a busy cycle lane. This will involve considerable risk to all passengers, more so for blind and visually impaired and disabled persons. It does not require a study to determine their safe passage, and Councillor Anderson's measures will not prevent collision with cyclists. The only safe solution is for buses to stop on the cycle lane at bus stops. Cyclists will then have three options: wait behind the bus, dismount and walk around the bus, or ride round the bus on its offside, mindful of oncoming traffic. Councillor Anderson, an enthusiastic cyclist, may be horrified at my suggestion, but Transport for London has a duty of care to deposit its passengers safely onto the pavement. That is why buses are designed for that purpose. And then a long letter from Councillor Terry Neville, leader of the Conservative group of Enfield Council and member for Grange Ward. He writes, "Did they really consider this? I refer to Councillor Toby Simon's letter, heading "This had all the hallmarks of a pre-planned stunt" in the Advertiser on October the 5th, in which he tells us that we, Labour, are always open to a well-reasoned response before making a decision. He was not present at the scrutiny meeting on September the 8th, called by me to review Councillor Daniel Anderson's decision to implement the cycle Enfield plans for the A105, so perhaps Mr Simon can be forgiven for thinking that his colleagues act in some kind of sanitised bubble, where the Queensberry rules are played out in full to the benefit of our residents. But then again, perhaps not, because he used to chair the committee. Perhaps he'd like to reflect on the following and then tell us whether the decision to confirm Mr. Anderson's decision was the result of proper consideration of a reasoned response. 1. There were more than 1,600 objections to the statutory consultation which ran between July the 6th and 29th. The officers prepared their draft report on all the objections and sent it to Mr. Anderson within 8 working days. Anyone who knows the Civic Centre procedure for preparation and publication of reports will know that timescale allowed for scant, almost nil consideration of the objections. No matter. Mr. Anderson seemingly considered all 1,600 and signed off the scheme in 4 days. 2. Freedom of information requests revealed that the bulk of the objections were received in the last 4 days of the consultation period. However, the same FOI request reveals, that's Freedom of Information request, reveals somewhat bizarrely that no notes were made of any of the meetings between Mr. Anderson and officers supposedly considering the objections. When I did the same job, every single meeting with officers was minuted. 3. Perhaps most damning of all is the recently revealed evidence that just a few days into the consultation, the order was placed with the contractor for the work to begin. Clearly, Labour was very open to well-reasoned response. They didn't even have the wit to at least make some pretence at proper consideration.
And now we have some details of what's on in Enfield. First of all, a review of a show at the Dugdale Centre, which is past, but reminds us that there are good things going on there, and we should keep an eye out for them. This is a review of Rudy Africa, Love, Goat in the Pearl, and it was at the Dugdale Centre on October the 15th. Only the most stony-faced of observers will have been left unmoved by this chaotic musical adventure, the latest in a series of borough-wide events being held to celebrate Black History Month. For what it's worth, the plot was straightforward. A young woman goes on a journey to trace her African roots, taking her, together with her mother and newly acquired Ugandan fiancé, to the so-called Pearl of Africa. She subsequently discovers that her father has passed away some years earlier, but is accepted into the community by his family and marries in a traditional Ugandan ceremony. But the wafer-thin narrative took a backseat to the mesmerising choreography and music, played on a variety of traditional instruments including marimbas, inangas, koras and drums. The show was largely stolen by vibrant, vivid, high-energetic dancers, and at the end, the cast invited the audience to join them on the dance floor. And if your feet were not at least tapping by then, you truly had no joy in your heart. This was a performance which it was impossible not to like, and one which deserved a full house. Maybe this will be remedied with future productions. Director Steve Kasamba took a bow at the end and gave a touching speech in which he thanked the cast, dancers, musicians and crew for bringing the show to life.
Okay. This is notice for volunteers needed for free of charge trials for a hearing aid. At Pindrop Hearing, we are pioneers of the latest hearing technology and are currently offering free of charge trials of the Phonak Lyric hearing aid. As one of the first hearing healthcare practices in the UK to fit this revolutionary product, we are now looking for volunteers with a hearing loss to come and try this technology with us. Lyric is breakthrough technology from Swiss hearing healthcare company Phonak. The soft hearing aid is comfortably inserted in the ear canal and remains in place for months at a time, and due to its position in the ear canal is completely invisible with natural sound quality. The trial is completely free of charge and without obligation, and you'll be helping us to learn and study this unique proposition in our local community. That's Pindrop Hearing, will be hosting an open day on Wednesday 26 October at our clinic in Winchmore Hill. This will be a great opportunity to get more information on Lyric and to have a free hearing test with one of our experts to assess suitability for this revolutionary product. If you would like to register your interest, the number to call is 0808 115 0536, and there are a limited number of spaces available. I'll reread that. That's 0808 115 0536, and the address is 748 Green Lanes, Winchmore Hill.
This is the calendar for the week commencing Monday the 24th of October. Things going on in Enfield. Starting on Monday, running through to Friday, October the 28th, there's the Autumn Shed 2016 at the Chicken Shed Theatre, Chaseside, Southgate. It's a half-term holiday workshop for 5 to 11-year-olds with a performance on the Friday. It starts at 10 a.m. every day. Tickets cost £130 and £65 for every additional sibling. If you want to contact the box office, the number is 020 8292 922. From Monday to Saturday, that's 24th to 29th, there's The Rock of Ages at the Dugdale Centre, London Road, Enfield Town. A hilarious musical set to the soundtrack of 1980s rock music at 7:45pm and a Saturday matinee at 2:30pm. Tickets between £15 and £18. The box office for that event is 020 8807 6680. On Tuesday, at the Millfield Theatre, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Millfield is at Silver Street in Edmonton, and performances at 1pm and 4pm on Tuesday, which is a stage adaptation of C.S. Lewis's timeless classic. Tickets £15, concessions £12.50, and a family ticket for £50. The box office for the Millfield Theatre is 020 8807 6680. And on Wednesday, take a trip back again at the Millfield Theatre to the 1920s in New York with Swinging at the Cotton Club. Enjoy music by Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. Tickets are £22, concessions £20, a family ticket for £50. And again, that box office number, 020 8807 6680.
And my item actually is an extended version of that last item under the title Love Jazz, Join the Club. America's Prohibition era contributed far more to the cultural and historic landscape than bootleg liquor, and mobsters with machine guns concealed in violin cases. In the Roaring Twenties and the decade of the Great Depression which followed, New York's celebrated Cotton Club was the hottest ticket in town. The Harlem nightclub's musical reviews featured many talented, legendary black entertainers. Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Count Basie, Fats Waller, Billie Holiday and Cab Calloway were among the musicians who had the club swinging, while dancers, Bojangles Robinson and the Nicholas Brothers and other dancers lit up the stage with breathtaking routines. And for one night, next Wednesday, the 26th of October, Edmonton's Millfield Theatre takes a trip back in time as the show Swinging at the Cotton Club recreates the magic and the spectacle of the famous hotspot. The show evokes the crooners and hoofers of the swing and big band era and the memorable songs and popular dance crazes of the time. The toe-tapping, finger-snapping tunes and the exhilarating high-energy choreography are recreated by the fabulous Lindy Hop Dance Company and tap dancers, alongside the Harry Strutter's Hot Rhythm Orchestra, featuring American vocalist Marlene Hill and compere and vocalist Megs Etherington. Lindy Hop was the original form of jive dancing, and the UK's premier jazz dance troupe certainly get the joint jumping. Stardust, God Bless the Child, Stormy Weather, Minnie the Mooch, Heidi, Heidi, Heidi-O, The Wrong Keyhole, and Won't You Come Home, Bill Bailey are just some of the songs performed. There's even a breathtaking Charleston masterclass. Whether you're 9 or in your 90s, the enthusiasm displayed by the vocalists, bands and dancers is infectious, and by the end of the 2-hour show, most, if not all of the audience are guaranteed to be up on their feet, clapping their hands and dancing in the aisles.
And the Nightingale Cancer Support Centre is working with Pearson's to put on a fashion show at the Enfield Baptist Church in Cecil Road on the 10th of November. You're invited to arrive at 7pm for champagne and canapé, And you will be able to view the new Pearson's winter collection for gentlemen, ladies and children, with hair by Hudson and Kemp and makeup from Clarins, Clinique and Dior. There will be a free goodie bag for all the ladies. If you're interested, the tickets are £20 per person, and you can book at www.nightingalesupport.org.uk or call 020 8366 9674.
And now sports, and we start with Enfield Borough in South Midlands Division 2. Enfield Borough's stand-in captain Leon Constantine led them to a 3-1 victory away to Pitstone and Ivinghoe in South Midlands Division 2 at the weekend. The visitors started the game with ferocious pace and could have been up 3-0 early on, but Isaac Stevens, Thomas Opoku and Jemiah Plenty Lawrence failed to capitalise on their opportunities. But Borough's breakthrough finally came when Solomon Nibuoki was brought down in the box and Alfie Hatch duly converted the penalty. Hatch should have levelled 5 minutes before the break, but debut keeper Hakan Cougar made a fine save to keep them 1-0 up. The away side failed to build on their lead and were punished in the 60th minute when Pitstone scored a penalty. Stevens was fouled in the box with 12 minutes remaining, and once again Hatch buried the spot kick. With 6 minutes to go, Dominic Cober-Joe got on the end of a Romany Critchlow Noble pass and fired it home to clinch the side's victory.
Cockfosters continue their good run. Cockfosters extended their unbeaten run in all competitions to 8 matches by easing to a 3-1 victory at struggling London Tigers in the Spartan Premier Division on Saturday. Goals from Max Mitchell and Tom Massey put the visitors in control, and although London Tigers pulled one back, Cockfosters were not to be denied, and Jerry Meyer added a third which saw them move up into 4th place in the table. "We played well, created a lot of chances," said team manager Dean Barker. "We controlled the game from the start and took an early lead, but we seemed to take our foot off the pedal after we got the second goal, which was a bit disappointing. But we stepped it up after they scored, and the third goal killed the game off. We could have won by even more in the end. Everything's going really well at the moment, and a lot of credit has to go to my coaching team. Gary Simmons, assistant manager, Steve Rolfe, first team coach, Jose Santos, first team coach, and Chris Stead, the goalkeeping coach, have all been a great help to me. There's a good mix of youth and experience there, and we all work really well together." Having hosted Hoddesdon Town in the league last night, Cockfosters face a crunch match on Saturday when they take the trip to Flackwell Heath in the first round of the FA Vars. "It's a huge match for us," Barker added. "Tough draw. I know a few of their players and they're a very good side. But there's no team in the FA Vars who play at a higher level than us, so every game in this competition's winnable."
And now for some rugby. Sarries claims stunning win in Toulon. Saracens made the perfect start to their defence of the European Champions Cup by condemning Toulon to their first ever home defeat in the competition on Saturday. Facing the side who had been champions for the previous 3 years, Sarries made a blistering start to race into a commanding lead in this Pool 3 clash, and they overcame a storming second-half fight-back from the hosts to win 31-23. There is probably a reason why Toulon had never been beaten at home in Europe before, said Director of Rugby Mark McCall. They have outstanding players, and all of their really big players stepped up in the second half. Sometimes they made something out of nothing, but for us it was a performance that had everything. In the first half we played some beautiful rugby with outstanding attacking play, and we showed terrific resilience in the second half when we twice went down to 14 men. We had enough composure and fight to get the job done, and it's a hell of a win. It feels good, and I can't say enough about the players. Sarries' storming start to the match saw them race into a 25-6 lead by the interval, courtesy of tries from Sean Maitland, Richard Wrigglesworth and Chris Wiles, and 2 conversions and 2 penalties from the boot of Owen Farrell. The hosts were a different proposition in the second half and, partially helped by the sin binnings of Maro Itoje and Shout Berger, scored tries through Levan Chilachava and Brian Habana to bring them back into the match. However, The visitors were not to be denied, and a late penalty from Farrell, making his first appearance of the season following injury, not only sealed their victory, but also ensured that Toulon did not even get a losing bonus point for their efforts. Saracens continue their European Champions Cup campaign by hosting the Scarlets on Saturday at 5:30 p.m.
An Enfield Taekwondo athlete has been given one of the highest honours in the sport by gaining master status. Nick Simmons was granted the title and became the only master of the Taekwondo England Association in North London at the Canada International Taekwondo Federation. Simmons of Total TKD, Southgate, has been involved in the sport for 27 years and has trained numerous champions. The event, held last month, was attended by more than 180 instructors and black belts from around the world, as Southgate Master Simmons, who started in the sport in 1989, successfully passed his 2-hour examination for promotion. Master Simmons started in the sport in 1989 and has since won medals, including a gold earlier this year. He was chosen as the captain to represent the England team at the World Championships in 2001. Visit www.totaltkd.org.
Town has bounced back with win after shock home loss. Enfield Town dusted off their woes from Saturday as they defeated Kingstonian 2-0 in the Ryman Premier Division on Monday night. Nigel Nita was back to his usual self as he scored the opener before the second came after some brilliant football from Samir Bimoutin. He took the ball away from the Kingstonian fullback and crossed behind Nita and found Darnell Winter, who scored the rebound after a save from Rob Tolfrey. It was a much better result for the Towners after their surprise 1-0 defeat at the hands of Wingate and Finchley. Steve Wales scored the only goal of the game in the second half, which gave Town their first home league defeat of the year. Manager Brad Quinton said, "I was very disappointed with the performance. If I could have made 9 substitutions, I would have. I kept them in the changing room after the game and gave them some home truths. For a local derby, it was a boring game for a neutral. It was 2 teams playing a dull game. But it's one of those things that sometimes happens in football. I gave them a chance to speak after I had them tell me if I thought I was in the wrong, and I could not hear a mouse. We've had a couple of injuries which have not been helpful, but we have a good, talented squad. Saturday's game was a one-off, but there are players knocking on my door wanting to play, and some of them deserve to play, so they will all now need to prove they can keep their spot in the starting 11. Town now face an away trip to Canby Island on Saturday. We will be prepared for the match. We will have a Yoker and Insanity class on Thursday, but the boys will be ready for the match," added Quinton. "And we will also watch Saturday's game so the players can see what I saw. They will look at their mistakes and they will learn from it. I will not let Saturday's performance happen again. I am not going to let a team that I manage play like that ever again." A minute's silence was held at the start of the Wingate game for former Enfield FC legend Tommy Lawrence, who you may have heard about before today. In the 5th minute, a free kick from Wales was well off target for the visitors, and later, former Town man Claudio Vilcu was denied on the edge of the home box from a similar position. Town's best chance of the first half came when a Scott Shulton shot was deflected and kept out by a late reaction save from Shane Gore. After the ball was cheaply given away in the 67th minute, Wingate broke quickly, and the move ended with Luke Eiffel cutting back from the right for Wales to curl in the bottom corner.
We have reached the end of our programme for this week. Thank you for listening. So from the team of Caroline, Ali, Darren and John, with Peter on the controls, it's goodbye. Please remember to turn over the address label in your postal packet, put the memory stick into the packet and return it to us as soon as possible in readiness for the next edition. Don't forget you can call Diane Jersey regarding any help you may require in connection with Enfield Talking Newspaper on 020 8805 6578. Coming up next, the latest news and information for the Greater London area from InfoSound. The Enfield Talking Newspaper will be with you again in 1 week's time.